right, trade talks between the U.S. and Canada collapsing overnight. A 50% tariff on $20 billion worth of Canadian goods taking effect at midnight. The Trump administration says Canada walked away from a deal that would have cut tariffs on steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. Canada is promising to hit back dollar for dollar, raising the stakes in a major fight with one of America's closest trading partners. Here to tell us more is U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer. Ambassador, thanks for joining us. This is kind of big news. So what do you expect to happen from here? Do you think trade talks will get back on track? There'll be a pause here for a while.
It's hard to say. We don't have new talks planned with the Canadians. We're moving forward with measures that respond to Canadian retaliation. Remember, as President Trump has introduced a trade policy to reshore American production and protect American jobs, two countries have retaliated against the United States, the People's Republic of China and Canada.
Canada does a lot of business with China.
They do, and they continue to retaliate. And after a year of that retaliation, we've said enough, and so we've taken countermeasures. Our interest is in protecting American workers and protecting American supply chains. We've been offering to bring the Canadians along on that path, really to cut the tariffs on them, on steel, on tariff autos, even lumber, things that are sensitive for them. And they've always had the best deal, and they still would have an even better deal, but they didn't want that.
So here's our Vice President, J.D. Vance. He was out in Ohio, and he's talking about American workers being replaced by labor overseas. Watch.
They have voted for corporations who sent jobs overseas rather than good American businesses who invested in you, invested in your communities, and increased your jobs. Who do these Democrats put first? Everyone else. You know who the Trump administration puts first? Americans. You, my friends, that's who we fight for.
Also, here's, Ambassador, here's a Truth Social post by President Trump. He says for the next 90 days, the United States will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of ground beef to be imported with no out-of-quota tariff. We have a commitment that this beef will be sold at 25% below current market prices. Here in this infographic that we have here, the ground beef and roast beef or beef roast prices and how they've increased. So a lot of people saying, look, you're just doing this because, you know, you're ahead of the midterms. You want to start to, you know, bring prices down. And not every Republican has been on board with this. Senator Tim Sheehy from Montana, who represents a lot of ranchers, says this will hurt his ranchers and his constituents. What's your response to Senator Sheehy on this?
Well, first of all, Senator Sheehy's a stand-up guy, really part of the team. We know his constituency is ranchers, and so he's standing up. What I will say is under President Biden, the price of beef skyrocketed. Finally, we've stabilized it a little bit. The price of beef came down a little bit last month, which is great. And this 300,000 metric tons that the president has agreed to come in is just for 90 days. It represents about 2.5% of annual consumption. And so it should be designed to really bring in the beef that consumers need the most.
Okay, I want to talk to you about this last topic because it's one that's very dear to my heart. I've been talking for a long time here on this network about the human rights abuses overseas, slave labor, sweatshops, and this administration, finally, someone is doing something about this. I want you to talk about what you are doing through tariffs to bring, to really crack down on slave labor overseas and make sure American workers aren't competing with slave labor, which is great for American workers, but also a lot of these slave labor are children.
Right. So the Republican Party's always been the party of freedom since Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. And so President Trump, since his first term and now, his trade policies have also prevented the import of goods into the United States made with slave labor or forced labor overseas. We have really strong laws in America that do that. A lot of people are surprised to find out that other countries don't have these laws. They don't have these laws. And so President Trump has said everyone has to have these laws to prohibit the import of goods with forced labor. Because if you don't, that's unfair trade. I shouldn't have to compete with sweatshops. Union workers, workers in auto factories who make the cars here, they shouldn't have to compete with that. And so we've said we'll have some tariff on you until you change your rules.
It's unfair and it's also immoral. And so kudos to your administration and to your work for raising the bar for all labor. We should not have slave labor and children should not be working. Thank you. That's prayer. Boy, it's loud over here. You're seeing these cars right behind us.